When your last paycheck arrives, where does the money come from after that? Most people can't answer that question clearly. This video lays out exactly what retirement income looks like in practice, and what the majority of Americans are not prepared for. There is also one aspect of retirement income that most pre-retirees dramatically underestimate, not the amount, but the sequence. The order in which different income sources are drawn from matters enormously for how long the money lasts. That piece of the picture comes back around toward the end. First, the landscape, and it is more varied than most people expect. According to the Federal Reserve's 2024 report on the economic well-being of U.S. households, published in May 2025, 82% of retirees describe themselves as doing okay or living comfortably financially. That is a reassuring number at first glance. But it requires context. Among that group, the retirees who reported the highest levels of financial well-being were those with multiple income sources, particularly those receiving income from a pension or from investment accounts alongside Social Security. Retirees who relied on Social Security alone reported financial well-being at significantly lower rates. The difference between those two groups is not primarily a difference in how much money they have. It is a difference in where it comes from and how predictable it is. That distinction shapes the experience of retirement as much as the account balance does. The most common retirement income sources, in order of prevalence, are Social Security, pensions, investment and interest income, and labor income from part-time work. Social Security is the most universal, received by approximately 78% of retirees overall, and 91% of those aged 65 and older, according to the same Federal Reserve report. Pensions are received by 56% of retirees, a figure that reflects both public sector workers and the tail end of private sector employees who retired with defined benefit plans before they largely disappeared from the private sector workforce. Investment income of some kind, including interest, dividends, or rental income, supports about 50% of retirees, and roughly 32% of retirees receive some form of labor income, meaning they continue to work in some capacity after officially retiring. What this picture shows is that most financially comfortable retirees are not living off a single source. They are drawing from multiple streams, each providing a different kind of security. Social Security provides a guaranteed base that cannot be outlived and adjusts annually for inflation. Pension income, where it exists, provides a similar guarantee. Investment portfolio income provides flexibility but also volatility. Labor income provides both cash flow and psychological structure, though it eventually ends. The combination of guaranteed income covering fixed expenses and portfolio income covering discretionary spending is the model that produces the highest levels of reported financial well-being among retirees, according to the Federal Reserve data. Building toward that model, rather than relying on any single source to carry the full load, is the organizing principle of sound retirement income planning. The retirees in the weakest financial position are those whose entire income depends on Social Security alone, and that group is larger than most people realize. According to the Social Security Administration, for nearly half of unmarried retirees, Social Security represents 90% or more of their total income. For a program whose average monthly benefit sits at approximately $1,976, that is a very narrow margin on which to live, particularly in an environment where healthcare costs, housing, and food have all risen substantially in recent years. For context, the average monthly rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the United States was approximately $1,500 in early 2026. A retiree living entirely on Social Security in most parts of the country is one significant unexpected expense away from a financial crisis. This is not a fringe scenario. It describes the income picture for tens of millions of Americans. Now to the sequence question that was raised at the beginning, because this is the part of retirement income planning that most conversations either skip or handle too briefly. When retirement begins, most people face a period before some of their income sources are available. Social Security can be claimed as early as 62, but claiming early results in a permanent reduction of up to 30%. Medicare does not begin until 65. If a person retires at 62, they face 3 years of private health insurance at full cost before Medicare kicks in. If they retire at 60, it is 5 years. These gaps require a bridge, typically funded from savings, and the amount drawn from savings in those early years has a disproportionate impact on long-term portfolio sustainability. The sequence of returns problem compounds this. When a portfolio is being drawn down rather than built up, a market downturn in the early years of retirement has a permanent negative effect that is impossible to recover from in the same way it could be recovered from during accumulation. A 30% market drop in year 3 of retirement, when a steady withdrawal is already being made, permanently removes assets that would have been part of the portfolio's recovery. The same 30% drop in year 15 when the portfolio has had time to grow is far less damaging. This asymmetry means that the first 10 years of a retirement portfolio's life are more important than any other decade. Protecting the portfolio during that window, through conservative positioning, a cash buffer covering 1 to 2 years of living expenses, or a careful income sequencing strategy that draws from different account types in a tax-efficient order, is the most consequential financial planning decision available to a new retiree. For people with a pension, the transition is considerably smoother than for those without one. But even with a pension, the sequence in which different income sources are drawn matters. Understanding the tax treatment of each source, which accounts to draw from first in early retirement versus later, and how to manage required minimum distributions from tax-deferred accounts starting at age 73, is a layer of planning that sits on top of the basic income question and has a meaningful effect on how much of the portfolio survives over a 30-year retirement. If this kind of practical look at retirement income is useful, take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe. There is more coming on exactly these topics, and subscribing takes just a few seconds. For people currently in or approaching the transition, a few anchors are worth holding on to. Building a clear picture of monthly income from all guaranteed sources, Social Security at the planned claiming age, any pension, and any annuity or guaranteed income product, before determining how much the investment portfolio needs to generate, is the right starting point. The goal is to cover as much of fixed monthly expenses as possible from sources that cannot be outlived, and to leave the investment portfolio for discretionary spending, healthcare costs, and unexpected needs. This matching of guaranteed income to fixed expenses is not just a financial strategy, it is a psychological one. Retirees who know their housing, food, and utility bills are covered by guaranteed income tend to report significantly higher levels of financial confidence and spend their discretionary income more freely, which is a significant component of what makes retirement feel like retirement rather than a prolonged exercise in anxiety management. Delaying Social Security claiming as long as possible, for those who can afford to, increases the guaranteed monthly income that will be received for the rest of a life and adjusts each year with inflation. For every year claiming is delayed past full retirement age and up to age 70, the monthly benefit increases by approximately 8%. That is a guaranteed, inflation-adjusted 8% annual increase that no investment can match without risk. For a married couple, the higher earner delaying to 70 also maximizes the survivor benefit that continues after one spouse dies, which is one of the more overlooked financial planning benefits of the delay strategy. The transition from paycheck to portfolio requires a different relationship with money than the one that worked during accumulation. The habits that built the retirement fund, saving, deferring, holding, do not automatically translate into the habits that sustain it. Learning to spend with confidence from a portfolio, rather than treating every withdrawal as a loss, is a psychological shift as much as a financial one, and it is one that benefits from having a clear plan, because clarity about where the money is coming from and how long it will last is what makes spending feel safe rather than frightening. One useful framing is to think of retirement income not as a single pool of money being slowly drained, but as a system of coordinated streams, each with a different role. Guaranteed income covers the essentials. Portfolio income covers the discretionary. A cash reserve covers the unexpected. Each stream operates on a different timeline and carries different risk. Managing them together, rather than drawing randomly from a single account, tends to produce better outcomes and a greater sense of control. The retirees who feel most financially secure are almost always the ones who can point to exactly where each category of expense is being funded from. That clarity, more than any single account balance, is what makes the day-to-day experience of retirement feel sustainable rather than precarious. The earlier that planning begins before the last day of work, the more clearly the path ahead looks on the day the paycheck stops.